again. I have good news. We are actually on the second to last video of the rock collection. Not of my entire collection, just of my collection for like general, normal, quotation marks, actual rocks. The next part of the series will actually be me looking at my gemstones that I have, because I wouldn't call it a small collection, but it's much smaller than the collection of rocks that I have. And I have it in a nice little glass case over there. I'm not sure if it shows up on camera, but in any case, I'll be going through those gemstones, like polished rocks, polished minerals and gems like this, for example. That is actually a rock. That is not a real apple. I don't imagine it looks like a real apple, but it might be hard to tell on camera. And stuff like this as well, I'll be going through in the next couple of videos. But yeah, so we're in the second to last rock collection, part of my series. The next video on my rocks will actually be the last for the general collection, as I've said. I don't know why I went on a little ramble there. You guys know what I'm trying to say. So yeah, here's the next 10. So we're gonna start out with, these are just my notes. You know, I can't just completely go off my memory because then I'm gonna forget certain things. I'm sure you guys understand. So, here we go. So yeah, also I do apologize if I'm a little bit out of it for this video as well. I worked the dessert buffet yesterday for my baking program, so I am definitely burnt out. But I still wanted to do this for you guys this week, so I made time because this is really cool stuff, and this is kind of how I decompress as well at this point. This is definitely a hobby, I would call it, these videos. And it gives me the opportunity to actually look at all the stuff that I've collected, which I haven't been able to do until I started these videos. Before, I didn't know I had anything valuable in my collection. I just thought they were all, you know, cool looking rocks, and that's about it. And now I might have gold. I very much doubt it still. I have not gotten it checked out yet. Yes, I will get around to it. No, it probably won't be anytime soon. We'll see. So yeah, this guy. This is actually a rock that is scratched by my fingernail and by a knife, which is really cool because you don't usually find rocks that soft. So automatically that would rule out a lot of rocks that are way too hard. I do think that this is still sandstone, just with gypsum coating, which is something that happens actually a lot for sedimentary rocks. You can have one type, I think I've already said this before, but you can have one type of rock and then it's coated by a different material of rock. And you might not be able to tell the difference between it having a coating of a specific rock or it being composed primarily of that type of rock. I've just got a little more experience with looking at rocks, so I can kind of tell this is still a sandstone. That's why I was confused when it scratched with my fingernail, because I was like, this looks like a sandstone. It sparkles like a sandstone, so what's going on here? So I would say that this is probably a quartz sandstone with gypsum coating. Gypsum gypsum and not like anything else like a limestone or something, because it doesn't fizz at all. And it's got kind of, and it doesn't really have like a slippery, greasy feel, so it won't be a soapstone, which was one of my other, I guess, potential identifications for what was going on with this rock. So yeah, just sandstone with gypsum coating, because gypsum can also be ground into more of a smooth pebble texture, so here you go. And again, I will always take photos at the end for you guys, as well as a group photo so you can see how the sizes of all the rocks compare to each other. You're probably wondering as well what the heck this little tub of water is doing here, because that's what it is, water and not vinegar. I'm going to use that to actually show you how some of the rocks look when you wash away like the surface grime or the dust, because you know a lot of rocks have like a dusty coat, like a dusty sort of ashy coating that doesn't really let you see the colors of the rock itself very well. It's just weathering, you know, it's exposed, so sometimes if you duck it into water you can see the more vibrant colors that you might otherwise miss that look very dull, and might lead to, one, misidentification, and two, you not really thinking that the rock is cool enough to pick up and keep to begin with. A lot of rocks out there that look dull are actually very cool once you kind of give them a nice little washing. So yeah, moving on. This is rock number 2. If I can peel off the number sticker. It was fighting me a little bit there. So yeah, this guy is limestone. This actually is one of the cooler samples of limestone that I have. I was going to show you guys something interesting, but I think it washed off or rubbed off by now. Oh, okay, no, I actually found it. So yeah, this is limestone with a quartz vein, first of all. So let me show you guys. Sometimes I have rocks that are sandstone or shale or something like that with a calcite vein, and sometimes I have rocks that are actually limestone with something else as a vein. You could also have limestone with a calcite vein, which is just the whole thing is gonna fizz. But yeah, so in this case, it's a limestone with a quartz vein. The quartz, like the white parts, are the quartz vein. It scratches the knife. It is not scratched by the knife, and it does not fizz. So yeah, very, very hard stuff. And then the gray stuff is the limestone. This is the host rock in this case. So, and there's something really cool that happened here. Let me actually, yeah, I don't have any more vinegar on me, so I'll have to show you guys just the leftover residue. I don't know if it'll even show up very well on camera. We will see we'll see in the editing process. And if not, if it doesn't show up that well, I'll try to get a photo of specifically what I'm talking about as well. But there are these little, like, orange dots that start to bubble up on the surface of the gray rock, the calcite, or the limestone that is. So they started to show up once I put it in the vinegar. Those are actually like an iron acetate, essentially, that's precipitating up. So what's happening is, as the vinegar is eating away at the limestone, certain iron impurities that are in the rock are kind of coming up to the surface and precipitating, and that's what the little cool orange, I would say they kind of look like microorganisms that you might see growing naturally on a rock. Those are just iron acetate kind of precipitating up. So yeah, really cool stuff. Now this guy is, you know how I told you that I can have different examples of types of rocks with veins in them? So this was a limestone with a quartz vein. This is a limestone with a calcite vein. So both calcite, the whole thing fizzes, and it's all pretty soft. It's all scratched by a knife. So yeah, limestone with quartz, limestone with calcite. And they both look super similar. So I thought this might actually be two of the same kind of rock, but once I actually started testing it, no, it's not. This is why testing for acidity and for hardness is really important. You don't want to get your rocks mixed up, if you care about that stuff, of course. Now, this guy. This guy is pretty cool as well. I'll show you guys. It does look like a vesicular basalt or something, or maybe a scoria, but it is not igneous. This is actually also calcite. So, basically, the way that this, I would kind of ID this as calcareous tufa, which is just a calcite-bearing rock. Composed of, I should say in this case, because it doesn't just have calcite in it. The whole thing is calcite. So how this is formed is by the precipitation of calcite in water. So I guess as the water starts to evaporate, the calcite minerals start gathering and forming a rock, and that's why it's so porous, because it formed as the result of water leaving, so it's not like it was able to completely form a compact rock with like hardly any holes in it like normal limestone or other calcite bearing rocks. That's why it looks that way, but the whole thing fizzes, and I very much doubt that it's another rock with, say, calcite in the holes, and that's why it's reacting that way. There's usually a difference in reaction, but this reacts extremely strongly with just vinegar, so that's probably exactly what it is. I would be intrigued to see what happens if I put it in like HCl, but I'm not willing to go down that rabbit hole again. I just barely managed to get rid of the HCl like 10%. I gave it to my dad and he got rid of it, and I'm no longer going to think about that. And I'm not even going to try to buy another bottle because, you know, the government might think I'm trying to kill someone. And I'm definitely not. I'm just, sometimes I do stupid things, you know. We all have those moments. You're human. Never think that you are defined by your stupidest moments, alright? It just means that you're a human being, and that's gonna happen. Sometimes you're gonna accidentally buy 10% like extremely corrosive acid and then not even realize it until it's already in your possession. And now you're kind of saying, they're like, what am I supposed to do with this? You let someone else handle it, or you bring it to a recycling center. That's what you do. Don't just dump it out in the sink or on the ground. Please don't do that. That's extremely dangerous. You know, some animal could lick it up. It could burn through the material and cause other problems. It could really mess up your piping, so that's why you don't want to put it down the drains, etc., etc. You know, but yeah, so that's my little PSA on that. Anyways, moving on to rock number 5. And anyways, the vinegar works just fine for what I need it for, so there's really no need to get like hydrochloric acid. So this is a siltstone. It's scratched easily by a knife. It just dislodges little silt grains. You can actually see when you press down with the knife, like little silt grains falling away. So that's how I knew that that's what it was. So yeah, both the white and the gray kind of scratch easily, I would say quotation marks, on the surface. This is why I think that there might be something else coating it as well on the surface. But because also they don't fizz. And then, none of this fizzes, so definitely a siltstone. The white stuff that's going through it though, right? I was trying to figure out what this vein was and I was running tests on it. It does scratch easily on the surface, but it doesn't fizz, right? So it's not a calcite, and I was very confused. I was like, well then what could it be? Because it's very shiny. And then I found a part of the rock. So I'm going to show you. This is the side that confused me. This is the weathered side. So there's a very high chance that there's something on it that is coating the rock that is scratching easily, but isn't necessarily fizzing because the rock is made of nothing that would fizz. And apparently the coating isn't either. So then you see this little portion of the rock that I decided to, you know, try to test again. The white veins don't scratch on this part. That's why I suspect that there may be something coating it on the weathered side. Though the gray still does scratch on this side. So I think the siltstone makes sense. The white part though, and it's even shinier in this part, so I think this is actually a quartz vein. Sometimes the weathered surface is going to confuse and deceive you, so you need to see if you can find a portion of the rock that's been chipped away so you can see the inside and test that better, because the inside of the rock will always tell you way more about the idea of the rock than the outside. Sometimes the outside is very helpful because, you know, there's either not been that much weathering or you can just run certain tests on the weathered surface as well. But then there are other times where you'll probably need to crack it open if you can't find an unweathered side. And that's what a rock hammer is very useful for. So yeah. And you're probably wondering, why is that a siltstone and not a sandstone? A siltstone is just even smaller particles than a sandstone, and it is scratched by a knife, whereas a sandstone is not. So sandstone and siltstone might look alike, but sandstone is way harder than siltstone. Both can be ground into by like weathering forces into a rounder rock, but only siltstone, between the two of them that is, can be scratched that easily. So yeah, I'll also kind of show you very, very small like grains. You cannot see any individual grains in this, so that's why it falls between sandstone and siltstone. And now for sample number 6. We are halfway through, and I'm having a trouble with the tape again. Goodness gracious. So this guy, all of the rock fizzes, every single part of it, especially like the dark parts. So I'm thinking it's likely a limestone. Actually, I'm gonna explain once I show you guys exactly what I think this rock may have been formed. Like exactly how I think it was formed. So this is likely this is likely a sample of calcite that was like kind of solidifying into a rock in quiet waters with like bits of organic material that would occasionally come in and form a new layer, like, or form part of a layer. Those are called laminations. So, like, whenever you have a specific rock that is forming and other parts are coming in, and it's only like a small percentage of the whole rock, and you can kind of see the bands, but it's not a metamorphic rock, those are likely laminations that kind of point to just a flow of rock over time coming in and forming different types of layers. And that happens especially in like alluvial or like other water-based environments, because I can't remember the exact different, there's so many different types of water-esque, like water bearing environments, for lack of better phrasing, because still tired from the buffet. But yeah, so I can't really think of all that stuff right now. But I know what I'm talking about, believe me. I think that this is definitely a case of there was already a limestone that was forming, and organic rich material kept coming in, forming darker laminations. And that's how it ended up looking when it all solidified into one rock. It's a really cool rock. I didn't know I had a sample like this. Again, this is why it's so, like, this is why it's cool sometimes to look at what you have in your collection if you have a rock collection. Because you never know what kind of cool stuff you could have found until you start looking at them. Now, I'm going to kind of push this back a little bit because I keep getting forward and forward. And there's rocks back here that I have to look at. So yeah, 7. 7 is this cool little sample. I think it's I identified it as a metamorphic phyllite. That is redundant. Phyllite is only metamorphic, but I just wanted you guys to know what class of rock I'm putting into. Remember, there's minerals and stuff like that. There's igneous rocks, tend to go hand in hand with minerals. Then there's sedimentary rocks, and there's metamorphic rocks. This is a phyllite. So it is very sparkly. It's got like a satiny sheen to it, which kind of tells you that it's a phyllite. And you can kind of see foliation starting, in these cool little like grooves and stuff like that. Also, I will show you guys a very specific thing that told me that it might be phyllite. So you see those lighter materials in there and how they're kind of curving and forming like wavy, cresty type foliation, like planes. That tells you that you might be looking at a phyllite. Like whole parts of the rock are just kind of bended in a specific way, and it's all very uniform with one another, with like that specific material is all kind of bent the same way. You might be looking, first of all, you're definitely looking at a metamorphic rock, but that tells you that you might be looking at a phyllite. Especially with how shiny this rock is. I don't think it's showing up very well on the camera, but it is very shiny, and it's got like a bluish tint to it. And it's very fine grained, like I said, satiny sheen, sparkly, striated appearance, excuse me. Striations is just a way of saying that something has like a linear appearance. Like there might be lines literally in appearance on the rock. If I ever find something else with any type of other striation, I will show you guys exactly what I mean, because it's kind of difficult to explain, especially with a metamorphic rock. Ooh, words are hard. But yeah, so with a metamorphic rock, it might be harder for me to point out striations because it's already got a very interesting looking texture that could distract it could distract your eye. So if I ever find another rock with striations, I'll show you. But yeah, it's got a liney appearance, doesn't it? Those are striations. So we're moving on to number 8. Number 8 is probably the rock that I wanted. Number 8 is the reason that I got this little tub of water, because it shows up way better when I dunk it in water. So here you go. This is just plain water, guys. There's no vinegar, no nothing. Okay. See how much nicer that shows up? Those colors would look very dusty without it. I will show you guys in a couple minutes once this dries off what it looks like when it's dry. I probably should have showed you the dry appearance before I dunked it, but it didn't occur to me to do that until now. So now we're just gonna wait. But yeah, so you see how it looks kind of pinkish? Yeah, this is a granite. This is a granite that's been rounded off by weathering forces. I can tell it's an igneous rock because it's kind of heavy. I know I was just tossing it up like it's not, but it's definitely got a weight to it. And just generally the pink appearance of it, and like the green hue to like the other colors in there, like the other I should say the other not inclusions. Words are so hard. The other rocks that you see in here are slightly greenish. I think they could be epidote maybe. It tends to appear in granites like this. But yeah, it's just a granite that's been really rounded off. Oh, and this granite dries quickly. There's already parts of it that are losing color. You see? That little patch of like dryness. Yeah, that's how the rock looks like without water on it. I can't. Once it's finished drying, I'll show you guys. So I'll set that aside here. And now, this guy, number 9, is a jasper with a high concentration of iron oxides. And it has definitely all been stained. There's probably also goethite in there, limonite, all those like little impurities that have shown up over time. The whole thing, I initially thought it might be just a different rock so iron stained that I wasn't going to be able to ID it. But no, I think it genuinely is just jasper. Because apparently jasper just shows up like this in some samples, so... Really cool rock. Yeah, jasper doesn't always look that nice in polished form that you see. In fact, there's a reason they sell that stuff in the gift shop already polished. If you saw some of where these rocks come from and how they look in their natural form, I imagine people would be... If you're like me, you might think it looks even cooler in its natural form. And you might be intrigued by how it looks when it's polished because, you know, that stuff is pretty interesting to me. But if you were other people, for example, who really only buy things because of how pretty they look, they might be less appealing in their natural form, hence why they don't sell them that way. Okay, look how fast this granite dried. That's how it looks like when it's dry. You see how you can barely see the color distinction? You can barely tell that it's pink? Yeah. Really cool stuff. This is why you need a little bucket of water sometimes. If you're ever walking around and picking up rocks and you're thinking, I don't know if I want to take this home because it might be a hassle, especially if it's like a bigger rock and you're like, I don't really want to make space for this, or I don't exactly have shelves that I can just put a bunch of rocks in, and, you know, etc. If you're just feeling lazy, maybe, who knows, and you don't know if you even want to bring it home or if it's worth the effort, or if you don't even know what it really looks like, you're curious, etc., any number of reasons, you could bring some water with you to just pour on the rock that you're looking at. And if the colors interest you, or if the general appearance interests you, once it's clearer, bring it home and then examine it there. Now, this little guy, this is a sample of, this is number 10, as you just saw on the, this is just like white masking tape that I use to number them so I don't get lost and confused as I've done in other videos trying to ID different things. So yeah, this is a sample of talc that has basically split in half. This is one half. This is the other half. Maybe a hint as to what it is. Talc breaks apart pretty much more easily than you might think a rock is capable of. And you can scratch it with your fingernails pretty easily. Those are real scratches. They're not rubbing off. And then, like, so it's not just the surface. This is just the inside of the talc. This is the inside of the talc. And it's got like a soapy, greasy feel to it when I rub it between my fingers. It leaves like a little white residue. Yeah, I don't know if it shows up. Like, it leaves a little nice white residue that like kind of feels soapy and greasy. So yeah, definitely talc. Very easily scratched by the knife. The knife left a deep gouge on one of them, and then I tried my fingernail because I was just curious to see what would happen, and it scratched it. So yeah, that definitely told me it was either talc or gypsum, or no, talc or soapstone, or, you know, like, no, scratch that. I just looked at my notes. It was between talc and chalk for me. However, it doesn't fizz in in vinegar, so it's got no calcite, so it's not chalk. And then, you know, that kind of told me, okay, so it's probably talc then. Yeah, this is pretty cool. Little talc sample. I just kind of tend to put them together like these two halves because they were originally one rock. And so yeah, that's all the rocks that I have for you guys today. Thank you for coming by as per usual. And like I said at the beginning of the video during my little ramble, we will be doing the last portion of the big rock collection ID in the next video. And then we're going to move on to gemstones. And then we're going to move on to my samples of fossils, most of which are corals because they're very easy to find on the beach. Aside from that, I have nothing else to show you guys today. If you have any questions, comments, concerns, ideas, whimsical little thoughts, go ahead and let me know by putting them down in the comments below. And, as per usual, stay curious, everyone.